The moment Ethan Cole realized the alien girl was not asleep, it was already too late. Her eyes opened in the dark, glowing softly like distant stars, and she leaned close enough for him to feel her breath. In a trembling whisper, she said, "They are listening through your fear." Ethan froze. The research vessel Odyssey Blue drifted silently at the edge of uncharted space, far from trade routes and even farther from help. It was supposed to be a simple mission. Survey a dead system. Collect data. Go home. Humanity had done this 1,000 times before. This time was different. Ethan was not a soldier. He was a systems engineer, the kind of man who fixed problems quietly and took pride in solutions no one noticed. He liked machines because machines made sense. Aliens did not. Especially not the one lying on the medical cot behind him. She had been found in a shattered life pod, tumbling between stars like discarded debris. No weapons. No distress signal. Just one fragile, glowing life clinging to existence. Her name, at least the closest translation, was Luma. She looked almost human, if humans were made of moonlight and glass. Her skin held a faint inner glow, shifting gently with her breathing. Her pulse was slow, uncertain. The medical scanners barely understood her biology, but one thing was clear. She had been running. For 12 hours, Luma had not moved. The crew believed she was unconscious. Sedated. Safe. Ethan had stayed anyway. He told himself it was to monitor the power systems in the med bay. Truthfully, he stayed because something about her presence made the ship feel watched. Not by her. By something else. When she whispered those words, the temperature in the room dropped. They are listening through your fear. Ethan swallowed. You're awake, he said, keeping his voice steady. Luma's eyes focused on him with terrifying clarity. I was never asleep. I was hiding. Before Ethan could ask anything else, the ship's lights flickered. Just once. But on a deep space vessel, even a single flicker meant trouble. The ship's AI chimed softly. Engineer Cole. Unidentified energy signatures detected. Multiple. Rapid approach. Ethan's blood ran cold. From where? Everywhere. The bridge erupted into motion seconds later. Captain Mara Vance stood rigid, staring at the tactical display. Red shapes bloomed across the screen like a spreading infection. Alien warships. Not explorers. Not traders. Hunters. They found her, Mara said quietly. The alien fleet belonged to the Varel Dominion, a species known across human space for one thing: total control. They believed knowledge was power, and power belonged only to them. Entire civilizations had vanished after the Varel arrived, stripped of technology, culture, even history. No survivors. No witnesses. Until now. They are not here for us, Luma said calmly over the open channel. You are simply in the way. Some of the crew stared at her with fear. Others with anger. Ethan saw something else. Resignation. Mara clenched her fists. We don't surrender people. Luma turned her glowing eyes to the captain. That belief is why your species frightens them. The first Varel transmission cut through the silence, sharp and emotionless. Human vessel. You carry stolen property. Transfer the luminous carrier immediately. Resistance will result in extinction. The bridge went silent. Ethan's mind raced. The Odyssey Blue was a science ship. Lightly armed. No chance against a Varel strike force. The logical choice was obvious. Give her up. Save the crew. But humans had never been good at doing what was expected. What are you? Ethan asked quietly, not taking his eyes off Luma. She looked at him, and for the first time, her calm cracked. I am memory. I am proof. I am what remains when they burn everything else. The Varel did not just conquer worlds. They erased them. Luma's species had discovered something dangerous. Not a weapon, but an idea. A way to store knowledge not in machines, but in living minds. Culture. History. Science. All woven into one being. The Varel could not destroy that idea. So they tried to own it. We don't have weapons that can beat them, the tactical officer said. Shields will fail in minutes. Ethan spoke before he realized he was standing. Then we don't fight them like a military. Everyone turned to him. Mara raised an eyebrow. Explain. Quickly. Ethan's hands trembled, but his voice didn't. The Varel rely on control. On prediction. They assume fear leads to obedience. So let's give them something they can't predict. Luma tilted her head. You plan to confuse gods. Ethan met her gaze. No. We plan to remind them why humans are dangerous. The plan was reckless. Maybe insane. But humans had survived worse by trusting creativity over strength. They rerouted the ship's power grid in ways it was never designed for. Sensors fed false readings. Heat signatures mimicked reactor failure. The Odyssey Blue began to look like a dying vessel carrying a useless prize. The Varel fleet slowed. They were cautious. They think we're breaking, Ethan whispered. That is when predators lean in, Luma replied. The Varel demanded boarding. Mara smiled grimly. Permission granted. As the docking clamps engaged, Ethan felt fear claw at his chest. Luma leaned close again. This time, she did not whisper. They are listening now, she said softly. But they do not understand what they hear. Ethan exhaled. Humans had never been the strongest species. Or the fastest. Or the most advanced. But they were storytellers. Builders. Problem solvers. And when pushed into a corner, they became something terrifying. The Varel were about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon was not technology. It was refusal. Refusal to surrender. Refusal to obey. Refusal to let fear decide the future. And this was only the beginning. The Varel boarding craft latched onto Odyssey Blue with a heavy, metallic clunk that echoed through the hull like a warning bell. Every human on the ship felt it. Some gripped rails. Some whispered prayers. Some simply stared at the ceiling as if they could see the enemy through layers of steel. Ethan Cole stood in the shadow of an open maintenance hatch, holding a toolkit that looked ridiculous in his hands compared to the weapons he wished he had. His heart hammered so hard it felt like it could trigger the ship's alarms by itself. Across the corridor, Luma sat on a portable medical chair, wrists wrapped in soft restraints that were meant to look like security measures but were actually there to keep her from collapsing. Her glow was dimmer than before, like a lantern carefully covered. She was hiding her light. She had told them the Varel listened through fear. Now Ethan understood what that meant. The Varel didn't just scan for heat signatures and sound waves. They read emotional patterns, stress, panic, hesitation, like code. So Captain Mara Vance gave the crew a simple order. Don't be brave, she said. Be boring. It was the strangest command Ethan had ever heard on a ship under threat of extinction. But it worked. The crew moved with calm, measured steps. No sudden runs. No shouting. No frantic motion. Even the ship's AI lowered its voice to a soft, polite tone. The Varel needed fear to map human behavior. Without it, humans became unclear. The airlock seal hissed. And the Varel entered. They were tall and narrow, wrapped in segmented armor that looked grown rather than forged. Their helmets were smooth, without visible eyes, but Ethan could feel their attention like cold fingers on the back of his neck. A leader stepped forward. A crest on its chest flickered with shifting symbols. Its voice came through the ship speakers, translated by the AI into clean, emotionless English. Deliver the luminous carrier. Mara stood with her hands behind her back, steady as stone. We're a civilian vessel. We found her drifting. She's injured. The Varel leader paused, as if the concept of injury annoyed it. Injury is irrelevant. Mara gestured toward Luma. She can barely stand. Luma lifted her chin slightly, as if to prove the point. Her glow stayed faint, controlled. But Ethan saw the tension in her shoulders. She was afraid. And she was trying not to be. The Varel leader's helmet tilted. You conceal her value. Humans do not conceal what they do not intend to steal. Ethan wanted to speak. He wanted to shout, "We didn't steal anything." But the crew's calm was part of the plan. So he stayed silent. Mara nodded once. "We didn't steal her. But we also don't hand people over like cargo." The Varel leader stepped closer. The corridor seemed to tighten around them. Even the lights looked dimmer. "You will comply," it said, "or you will be erased." That word landed like a blade. Erased. Not killed. Not defeated. Erased. A slow, methodical removal of everything that proved you ever existed. Mara didn't flinch. "You're welcome to try." Ethan's stomach dropped. That wasn't boring. That wasn't calm. That was a challenge. The Varel's helmet turned slowly, scanning the humans present. Ethan felt the pressure in his skull increase, like the alien was pressing against his thoughts. Luma whispered, barely moving her lips. "They are reading you." Ethan forced his breathing to steady. Slow in, slow out. He pictured a neutral screen. Blank. Empty. The Varel leader's voice sharpened. "You hide behind false courage. You will break." Then something unexpected happened. Captain Mara Vance smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not a polite smile. A smile like someone who had already made peace with the worst outcome, and decided to be dangerous anyway. "Engineer Cole," she said calmly, without looking away from the Varel. "Start Phase 2. Ethan's hands moved before his fear could stop them. He tapped his wrist console and sent a signal into the ship's systems. Deep inside the hull, hidden behind panels and insulation, dozens of small devices activated. They weren't bombs. They weren't weapons. They were something far more human. Tricks. The Varel fleet outside watched the Odyssey Blue as its reactor signature suddenly spiked, then dropped, then split into multiple ghost readings. On their scanners, the ship looked like it was tearing itself apart. But inside, the lights stayed steady. The air remained calm. The Varel leader stiffened. "What have you done?" Mara's voice stayed smooth. "We're a science vessel. Our systems aren't built for this stress. We might explode. Or we might not. Hard to say." The Varel didn't understand sarcasm. But they understood uncertainty. Their helmets flickered with internal communication. Their bodies shifted subtly, like a pack sensing danger. Ethan's pulse climbed again. Luma leaned closer to him, her glow almost invisible now. "They cannot stand chaos," she murmured. "It is poison to them." Ethan swallowed. "Then let's feed them." The Varel leader raised a hand, and two soldiers stepped forward, weapons angled toward Luma. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to move. But Mara lifted a hand slightly. "Careful," she said. "If you fire in here, you might rupture something. And then we all die. Including your precious carrier." The Varel leader hesitated. That was the crack. That was the opening humans needed. Because humans were not stronger than the Varel. They were not more advanced. But humans were masters of one thing the Varel hated. Improvisation. Ethan triggered the next sequence. The ship's AI began broadcasting a harmless but aggressive wave pattern through the corridor speakers. It sounded like static, until it wasn't. To Varel sensory systems, it was like nails scraping across bone. The Varel soldiers staggered. Their weapons dipped for just a second. Luma's eyes widened. "That frequency, how did you?" Ethan didn't answer. His hands moved fast, flipping switches and rerouting signals like a musician playing a final, desperate song. The Varel leader snarled. "Stop." Mara's smile faded into steel. "No." Then the ship's gravity shifted. Just slightly. Enough that the Varel, used to perfectly controlled environments, lost balance. But the humans, who trained in variable gravity, adjusted instantly. The corridor became a stage where one species stumbled and the other moved like it had planned this forever. Ethan saw the Varel leader brace against the wall, fighting to regain control. And he realized something that made his fear transform into a strange kind of hope. The Varel were not gods. They were just used to winning. Luma's glow pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat of light. They will react, she whispered. They will call the fleet. They will punish you. Mara stepped forward, voice low. Let them. Ethan looked at Luma. You said they listen through fear. Luma nodded. Ethan took a steady breath, forcing calm into his chest like a shield. Then we stop being afraid. Outside the hull, the Varel fleet repositioned. Weapons arrays began to charge. The standoff was no longer a standoff. It was a countdown. And the humans had only one chance left, to turn a science ship into a legend. Because if the Varel could erase worlds, then humanity would do the one thing the Varel could never tolerate. Humanity would make the entire galaxy watch. The Varel fleet tightened its formation around the Odyssey Blue like a steel noose. Energy readings spiked across every screen on the bridge, each number a quiet promise of destruction. Inside the ship, something very human happened. People started asking questions. Not panic-filled questions. Not desperate ones. Curious ones. What happens if we push the signal a little further? Can we make the echo loop instead of spike? What if we let them think we've lost control, but only halfway? The Varel expected screaming, begging, chaos. Instead, they got a crew of humans leaning into the unknown with focused eyes and restless minds. Ethan stood at the heart of it, fingers flying over his console, sweat cooling on his neck. The ship systems were stretched far beyond safety margins, but they were holding, because humans built machines with forgiveness in them. Redundancy. Flexibility. Room for error. The Varel built for perfection. Perfection broke when reality pushed back. They're recalibrating, the tactical officer said. They're trying to isolate the interference source. Mara nodded. Which means they don't understand it. Luma stood near the bulkhead, unrestrained now. Her glow had changed, not brighter, but sharper, like light passing through crystal edges. She was watching the displays with intense focus. They believe knowledge must be controlled, she said softly. They never learned to let it wander. Ethan glanced at her. Humans are very bad at that. She tilted her head. I see. The Varel commander's voice cut through the ship again, colder than before. You are destabilizing yourselves. Cease immediately. Mara folded her arms. You came into our house. You don't get to tell us how to rearrange the furniture. That answer made no sense to the Varel. And that was the point. The Varel deployed a countermeasure, an energy pulse designed to shut down foreign systems by forcing them into rigid synchronization. It worked perfectly on most species. The Odyssey Blue did not synchronize. It stuttered. It wobbled. It adapted. Ethan felt the deck vibrate under his boots as systems rerouted themselves automatically, searching for balance like a living thing. Warning lights flared, then dimmed. The ship did not shut down. It learned. They just tried to lock us into a pattern, Ethan said. Our systems refused. Mara allowed herself a small, fierce grin. Because we never use the same pattern twice. On the Varel flagship, confusion spread like a fracture. Their sensors reported contradictions. The human ship was failing, but not failing. Power was leaking, but also increasing. Signals overlapped, twisted, reappeared from impossible angles. To the Varel, it looked like madness. To humans, it looked like opportunity. They're hesitating, the navigator said. They don't know which outcome to commit to. Luma closed her eyes briefly. They fear unpredictability more than death. Ethan leaned closer to her. Then help us. Her eyes opened. I already am. She stepped forward, placing her glowing hand against the ship's inner hull. The light from her skin spread in thin lines, following conduits and pathways like veins. The ship hummed. Not louder. Clearer. What are you doing? Ethan asked. I am listening, she replied. Your ship is not silent. It speaks. You simply never learned how to hear it. Data flooded Ethan's console. Patterns, harmonics, micro-responses in the metal itself. The hull wasn't just structure. It was a sensor. A story. "She's turning the ship into an instrument," the science officer whispered. Ethan laughed once, breathless. "Of course she is." Together, human curiosity and alien memory rewrote the rules mid-conflict. They didn't block the Varel scans. They reflected them. They let the Varel see themselves. Every aggressive calculation echoed back amplified, distorted, revealing gaps in logic the Varel had never questioned. Their own certainty became noise. On the Varel flagship, alarms began to sound. Their commander stiffened as something impossible happened. The human ship began broadcasting. Not a weapon signature. Not a threat. A message. It wasn't words. It was a living archive, human curiosity encoded in raw data. Music fragments. Mathematical proofs. Fiction. Failed experiments. Wild ideas that went nowhere and ideas that changed everything. A flood of why, not how. The Varel systems struggled to process it. They had no category for knowledge without purpose. Their networks slowed. Then stuttered. Then overloaded. Ethan felt tears sting his eyes as he watched the data stream. "We're not attacking them." Mara shook her head. "No. We're introducing ourselves." Luma's glow intensified, feeding the broadcast, weaving her people's lost memories into the human signal. Not as weapons, but as questions. What could you become? What did you destroy? What did you fear enough to control? The Varel commander screamed an order, and several ships fired. Not at the Odyssey Blue. At empty space. Their targeting systems couldn't decide what was real anymore. "That did it," the tactical officer said, stunned. "They're pulling back." One by one, the Varel ships disengaged, retreating just far enough to regain control. They hadn't been defeated. But they had been shaken. For the first time in generations, the Varel withdrew without erasing anything. Silence settled over the bridge. Ethan slumped into a chair, heart pounding. "We survived." Mara exhaled slowly. "We did more than that." Luma turned to the viewport, watching the distant lights of the Varel fleet fade. Her glow softened, becoming warm again. "They will not forget this," she said. "You have infected them with uncertainty." Ethan stood beside her. "Good." She looked at him, something like wonder in her eyes. "My people believed memory was survival. You have shown me something else." "What's that?" "Curiosity," she said. "Curiosity is rebellion." The Odyssey Blue was damaged. Exhausted. Held together by ingenuity and stubbornness. But it was still flying. And somewhere in the darkness, a dominant empire had just learned a terrifying truth. Humanity could not be controlled. Because humans did not even fully understand themselves. And that made them dangerous. The galaxy would feel the echo of this moment. Not as a warning. But as an invitation. The Varel fleet did not return. That fact alone unsettled everyone aboard the Odyssey Blue more than their attack ever had. Predators did not simply walk away. They observed. They learned. They waited. The ship drifted in silence for several long moments after the last hostile signal vanished. No one cheered. No one relaxed. Every human on board understood instinctively that something much larger than survival had just begun. Captain Mara Vance broke the quiet. "Status report. Engines functional but stressed. Power system stable, improvisational routing still active. External communications, incoming." That last one made everyone look up. "From the Varel?" Mara asked. The communications officer shook her head slowly. "No. Multiple sources. Long range. Civilian. Military. Unknown." Ethan frowned. "That's impossible. We're weeks from settled space." Luma's glow shifted, faint ripples of light moving across her skin. "Not impossible," she said. "Just overdue." The main display lit up with symbols, ships, probes, listening posts. Signals that had been quiet for years were suddenly alive. Someone had been watching. The Varel had not erased the broadcast in time. Human curiosity, woven with Luma's living archive, had escaped into the dark like a spark in dry air. And the galaxy noticed. Messages arrived in fragments at first. Broken translations. Cautious queries. What did you do to the Varel? Are you alive? Was that signal real? Ethan stared at the data scrolling past. They're not asking if we won. Mara nodded slowly. They're asking if we changed the rules. Because the Varel had always been the final argument in galactic politics. When they appeared, resistance ended. Cultures adapted, or vanished. Until now. Luma stepped closer to the display, her expression distant. My people dreamed of a moment like this, she said. A moment when fear would loosen its grip. Ethan looked at her. And did they know how to handle it? No, she replied honestly. They believed knowledge alone would save them. Outside the ship, something extraordinary happened. A small vessel dropped out of hyperspace. Then another. Then dozens. They kept their distance, cautious but curious. Different shapes. Different technologies. Species that had learned to hide rather than fight. They were not allies. Not yet. They're forming a perimeter, the tactical officer said. Not aggressive. Observational. Mara folded her arms. They want to see what the humans do next. That realization settled heavily on Ethan's chest. Humanity had never asked for leadership. It had stumbled into it. Ethan turned to Luma. If we speak again, if we broadcast, what happens? She met his gaze. Then you stop being an accident. The bridge grew very still. Mara inhaled slowly. We didn't come out here to start a movement. Ethan nodded. But we did start one. The question wasn't if they should speak. It was how. The Varel controlled through certainty. Through answers that left no room for alternatives. Humans thrived in questions. Mara straightened. Open a channel. Wideband. The crew exchanged glances, fear flickering, but something else too. Pride. Ethan stepped forward, hands hovering over the console. What do we say? Mara considered that for a long moment. Then she said, the truth. The signal went out. Not polished. Not rehearsed. Human. This is the research vessel Odyssey Blue, Mara began. We are not conquerors. We are not saviors. We were afraid. Ethan swallowed as the message carried on. We encountered the Varel. We survived by refusing to behave the way they expected. We didn't overpower them. We confused them. Luma placed her hand gently on Ethan's shoulder, and he felt warmth spread, not just through his body, but through the ship. We believe fear should not decide who gets to exist, Mara continued. If you've been hiding, if you've been erased quietly, you are not alone anymore. The silence that followed was heavier than any battle. Then responses began to arrive. Stories. Worlds lost. Cultures broken. Species reduced to whispers. And beneath it all, the same question repeated again and again. What do we do now? Ethan leaned back, exhausted. They're asking us for direction. Mara closed her eyes briefly. Then we give them what the Varel never did. She opened her eyes. Choice. Luma stepped forward, her glow brightening, not blinding, but steady, like dawn. I was created to preserve what was lost, she said. But humans, you do something different. What's that? Ethan asked. You share risk, Luma replied. You do not promise safety. You promise possibility. The ship's AI spoke quietly. Long-range sensors indicate the Varel fleet has halted beyond scanning distance. They are observing. Ethan smiled faintly. Let them. Because for the first time, the Varel were not the ones being studied. They were the unknown. The Odyssey Blue became something more than a ship that day. It became a signal fire. A reminder that even empires built on fear could be challenged, not by force, but by refusing to play the role assigned to you. And in the growing network of voices answering humanity's call, one truth became clear. The galaxy was no longer silent. It was thinking. And that terrified the Varel more than any weapon ever could. The final test was coming. Not a battle. A decision. And humanity would make it the only way it knew how. Together. The Varel did not attack. That was the most frightening thing of all. Days passed as the Odyssey Blue drifted at the center of a growing, careful gathering of ships. None came too close. None powered weapons. They watched. They listened. They waited to see what humans would become when the galaxy was finally paying attention. Ethan barely slept. He sat in the observation bay with Luma, watching stars slide past like slow thoughts. Her glow was stronger now, no longer hidden, no longer afraid. It reflected softly off the glass, painting the room in gentle light. "They are afraid of silence," Luma said quietly. "That is why they erased us. Silence is where questions grow." Ethan nodded. "Humans have never been good with silence either. We fill it with stories." She turned toward him. "And stories change people." The Varel fleet lingered just beyond sensor range, a dark thought that refused to leave. Their empire had been built on one truth: fear worked. Control worked. Erasure worked. Humanity had introduced a flaw in that truth. Curiosity spread faster than fear. On the bridge, Captain Mara Vance listened as reports came in from across the loose alliance forming around them. Not treaties. Not commands. Conversations. A species of engineers who had hidden inside asteroid shells for centuries offered new hull designs based on flexibility, not strength. A nomadic culture shared navigation methods built on intuition instead of fixed routes. Ideas flowed freely, unguarded. The Varel had never allowed that. "They're not organizing into a fleet," the tactical officer observed. "They're collaborating." Mara smiled tiredly. "That's worse for the Varel. Because you could destroy a fleet. You couldn't erase a conversation once it started." The Varel finally spoke again 3 days later. Their commander's voice cut through every channel at once, sharp and controlled, but strained. "You have disrupted balance," it said. "Withdraw. Return the carrier. This ends now." Luma stood beside Ethan as the message echoed through the ship. Her expression was calm, but her light flickered with memory. "They are offering fear disguised as peace," she said. Ethan looked at her. "What do you want?" She was silent for a long moment. "I was made to survive," she said slowly. "But survival alone is not living. If I go with them, they will own my past. If I stay, the future becomes uncertain." Mara's voice came through the intercom. "We're not making this choice for you, Luma." That was the difference. The Varel decided for others. Humans asked. Luma stepped forward, her glow brightening until the bridge was filled with warm, steady light. She opened a channel, not just to the Varel, but to everyone listening. "I am Luma," she said. "I am not property. I am not a weapon. I am memory, and memory chooses where it belongs." The Varel commander responded instantly. "You will return." Luma leaned closer to the console, her voice soft but unshakable. "No," she whispered. And somehow, that whisper carried farther than any shout. Ethan felt it ripple through the ship, through the gathered vessels, through the quiet minds watching from the dark. A single refusal. Calm. Certain. The Varel did not know how to answer that. Their fleet shifted, then stopped. Sensors showed hesitation spreading like a crack through their formation. "They're pulling back," the navigator said, disbelief in her voice. "Fully retreating." No dramatic explosion. No final battle. Just withdrawal. The Varel left behind something they had never abandoned before. Control. Silence settled over the stars again, but it was a different silence now. One full of thought, not fear. Ethan exhaled slowly, feeling the weight lift from his chest. "It's over." Luma shook her head gently. "No. It has begun." In the days that followed, the Odyssey Blue became a meeting place. Not a capital. Not a throne. A table. Humans shared freely, mistakes as much as successes. Other species did the same. No one pretended to have all the answers. That honesty became the foundation of something new. Ethan stood once more in the medbay where he had first met Luma. The room felt smaller now, less like a sanctuary and more like a memory. "I thought you were asleep," he said quietly. Luma smiled, a small, luminous curve of light and emotion. "I was listening." He laughed softly. "You whispered something chilling." "Yes," she replied. "Because fear listens. But curiosity listens longer." Outside, the stars burned on, unchanged, uncaring. But the galaxy beneath them was different. For the first time, humanity was not just exploring space. It was reshaping the story. Not as conquerors. Not as saviors. But as something far more dangerous to fear-driven empires. A species that refused to stop asking questions. And somewhere in the dark, the Varel were learning a terrible new lesson. You could erase worlds. But once curiosity woke up, you could never put it back to sleep.